Right, so I've got some floors and walls set up based on my image, and now I want to make some elements that I couldn't create easily using those wall and floor tools. Right, so I'm going to make some different elements, and so I'll just zoom into this area in the image. But then the tool I'm going to use on the architecture tab, you'll see if you press the drop down arrow next to component, you'll see there's an option to model in place. So that is your main modelling tool when you're working in a project to make your own solids. That's essentially the tool you use. So you need to make sure you know how to get to that tool, and once you have chosen model in place, it'll ask you for a category. At first you probably won't know which category to use, so if you're not sure, just use generic models. So generic models is a good all-round category. So I'll just select that, click OK, and then I'm going to give it a name. So I'll always ask you for a name for a custom family like this, and I'm just going to call it stacked unit 01. That's what I'm trying to make, and then I'll click OK. Right, so having done that basic setup, then you get access to the main modelling tools. And so you may remember some of these from AutoCAD. Extrusion probably being the main one. But then you do have equivalents for all of these in AutoCAD. Sweep, Swept Blend, Blend and Revolve are your main solid modelling tools. But Extrusion is the most important one, especially at first. And they're probably easier than in AutoCAD as well. So when you click on Extrusion, do you remember in AutoCAD how you make an extrusion? Were you making polylines or just doing press pull? Oh, your polylines, yeah. Yep. So there are different ways of making extrusions in AutoCAD, but because they often rely on polylines, it can be a bit fiddly. With Revit, once you click on extrusion, it's a bit like making a floor. You don't have that pick walls option, but otherwise you have all the same options for drawing your shape. And you really just need to think of them at first as a 2D profile. And so here I'm going to draw the shape I want in plan. So I do want just to be straight on that side, but now I want to have some curves on this edge. So instead of drawing with the straight line tool, I'm going to change to one of these arc options and just click another point. So that's for the end of my arc, and then I'll click a point in the middle of that arc. So if you remember drawing arcs in AutoCAD, you do it the other way. It's usually first point, then an intermediate point on the curve, and then the end. But in Revit, it's different. You do the start and the end of your arc, and then you do a point in between to give the curve. Which might seem back to front, but it probably makes it easier. So again, here I'll just click another point for the end of this arc, and then give the point for the curve. So it's a lot easier probably to get those nice smooth curves using the tangent as well. Okay, so now I want to go back to drawing with straight lines. And I'll just bring an edge down here, and then coming across, I might just close this one off. So I'm going to bring it back to the beginning. And then if you remember to join things to corners in Revit, you've got trim to corner, and I can just choose these two lines. Okay, so I've got a very basic shape there, and I'm just going to click tick to finish to show you that in 3D. So if I go down to my 3D view, orbiting, you can see the shape, and it's made it into a 3D form. So you might be thinking, well, I could do that with a floor, but the advantage using a solid is that the height is adjustable. The floor, on the other hand, tends to just be set to the height of your level. But solids like this, you can easily adjust the height for the top and the bottom. So when it's selected, you can see you have an arrow at the top and the bottom, and you can just use those to stretch so that it's higher at the top, and you can also use that to lift the bottom off the ground. If you're having trouble seeing it in a 3D view like this, you can try a section view. Okay, so there I can see my solid. And notice everything else is still greyed out. So remember that idea of working with a family. Essentially a family is a group of objects that live together and are grouped together. So in this situation I've just got the one extrusion, but if I go back into plan, back onto the Create tab, and you can see I've still got all of those solid tools. So I remember before I finished the extrusion, but I didn't finish the family, and that's often where people get tripped up at first when they're making their first in-place families, is you'll just try and get out of the tool once you've made something by clicking Finish Model. That completes the family, and I don't want to do that yet. So I'm going to go and make another extrusion, and I'm simply going to draw shapes a little bit different to the ones I made earlier. So I'll go to the Arc tool, and I'll just draw something that's, again, a little different. Something like this. So I'll get that sort of staggered effect. And I'll just put some straight edges down here, I think, and then better fix that. And then I'll draw, again, something different here. Right, so I've got two solids now that are part of this family. And rather than using the arrows after I've made it to set the height, I'm going to go over to Properties here, and you can see there it's got an extrusion start and extrusion end. So there I can type in a height, and I'll make it, let's say 600 for the start, and let's just say 800 for the end. So that's going to start 600 mil above the ground, so about this high above the ground, and then go to 800, so it'll be 200 mil deep. And I'll click tick to finish the solid again. To make it easier to see those heights, I'll go to my section view. And so there, you can see my two solids are very close together, and that's why it's hard to see them separately. So I'm just going to stretch the, also select the one that I made first. So as I was showing you, you can use the arrows to make quick changes to your height. But if you want things to be even, it's usually best to type in values. So once you've created your solid, you can easily just go into Properties and type in a start and an end point. So 200 and 400 is what I want there. And then here you can see 600 and 800. So I've got a gap of 200 and then the solid, gap of 200 and then a solid. So into my 3D view, you can see then those shapes building up. And then I can go and make more. So back into the floor plan. And again, Create tab, Extrusion. And I can just keep making more solids. So I'll just do another shape. Something like this, just want to get that again, that staggered sort of effect. Notice it's pretty good at keeping things smooth if you are trying to do that. change that one, but I'll leave it for now. And okay, so I can keep building that up. And so I better just select this one. The height there, you can do again after you've made the solid. If you select it, you'll see it come up in properties. So remember, you've got a bottom and a top always. Think about both those things. So here, I'm going to make this one start at 1,000 and go up to 1,200. So that should again give me my 200 gap. And if you're not sure, you've got the section views to check those heights. Okay, so I might just finish the model, and then you'll see in my 3D view that basic solid form. But now I might realise, well, I need a pathway through there. And so without going and selecting each of those shapes to add that in, I'm going to use a void. So just like a floor, to go back and edit it, when you select it, you get an option to do that. So here you can see as I click to select that family, remember it's a group of solids, so it's not an extrusion. When I select it, it's a family or a group of extrusions. Then I can choose edit in place, and that means the in place family. Don't worry too much about what in place means. It basically is a kind of family. So if I choose edit in place, now I can select the individual extrusions or solids. And I can go back to my ground floor view. And on the Create tab again, under Void Forms, you have all the same options as you do for solids. So remember these ones, extrusion, and the others too, Sweep, Blend and Revolve, are all solid modelling tools, so they'll give you solid elements. But if you go under Void Forms, you get all of the same options, but to create voids. So I'll choose Void Extrusion. We'll look at these other options later. And Void Extrusion, and I'm going to draw a shape in plan, a profile. So using the Arc tool, I'm just going to give it my basic shape there. That'll do. And I'll draw another one on the inside. Yeah. Yeah, I don't mind if it papers actually. And so it's got to be a closed shape just like an extrusion. So I need to cap the ends off by drawing lines to connect those two arcs. So just like AutoCAD, where you need to use closed polylines to make an extrusion, you need to have the shapes all connected. So in other words, the endpoints all need to be touching at the corners. Okay, so that'll work. If I click the tick to finish it, it will create the void, but I want it to cut through all of these solids I've made. So I'm going to change the height over here. I'm going to change the start back to 0, so it starts from the ground. And then the end I'll make higher than my highest platform, because I'll probably add a lot more of these afterwards, and I want it to cut through all of them. So I'm going to make that height there 3,000. So that should go through the 3 I've made and any more that I make afterwards. So tick to finish. That will create the void. And you can tell here from the edges that are missing that it has already cut my solid. But because it's selected, I can't see that really very clearly. But I'm going to click into an empty space to deselect it, and then you can see pretty clearly that it's cutting those forms. And in my 3D view, it's even clearer. So if you just think about how solids and voids can go together to make different elements that you might need to create, you'd be surprised how many elements that you maybe look at all the time in buildings that look complicated can be created by, again, just combining extrusions or solids and voids in different ways. So later we'll look at how you can make extrusions in different planes as well. So extrusions don't need to start with a profile that's parallel with the ground. They can be perpendicular to the ground or at any other angle. But for now, I'll just leave it at that. So just try to make some solid forms for any, especially for any unusual shapes that you might be trying to create. And so I'll just finish that model. And maybe just to help you view those, I'll just point out a couple of things with your views as well. So you've seen I've been looking in the section view, and my solid is pretty clearly, or my solids are pretty clearly visible there. But you may be modelling something in a different location and it might not come up in your section view. So just remember, you can always make a new section view on the View tab. Got the section tool. You can make as many sections as you like. So I'll just click 2 points with that section tool, and you can see it's giving me a section looking to the left. Down in my project browser, I have a new section called section 2, which I'll open, and you can see pretty clearly what's happening there. Back into the ground floor, and I might want something that shows this pond down here. So again, on the View tab section, and I'll just click 2 points left to right, cut through that area. And again, I've got a new section view now in the project browser. I can look at that, and then you can see that area that's been cut out of the floor there. So with interiors, that's really important because you won't see everything in every view. Even in 3D views, it could sometimes be difficult. So it's important to be able to cut through your model and view internally any area that you like. So don't forget about section views, and I'll finish that there.